All right. So we are going to be talking, if you have a notebook or anything, please get it out and try to write down the topic. It's about the reference angle. That's what I'm going to start with today, reference angle. All right. So what I need from you as of right now, try to do this. I'm going to give you the y-axis, x-axis. All right. And do you remember when we try to put those dots, like if I want to put 2 and, okay, which 2 and 3? I want you to plug in these points. -2 and 3. You don't have to, just show me which quadrant each one of them will be at. So 2 and 3, -2 and 3, -2 and -3, and 2 and -3. 2 and 3, because this one is positive and positive, we're going to leave it here in the first quadrant. So 2 and 3 is going to be right here in the first quadrant. The -2 and 3, because the negative, the x-axis is negative, so we're going to be in the second quadrant here. This is negative and the positive. All right. The third one, because negative and negative, it is going to be in the third quadrant right here. And the fourth one, +2 and the -3, +2 and the -3, it is going to be in the fourth quadrant. Just remember that this is your first quadrant, this is your second quadrant, this is the third quadrant, and this is your fourth quadrant. Okay, I just labeled it. We got this? Do you understand that? If I have a unit circle, and if the hypotenuse is +1, because it's a unit circle, all right? And if I ask you to graph a right triangle right here, okay? This is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. Okay, what is the cosine? Cosine equals what? Please write it in the chat. What is cosine? No, cosine equals what over what? Perfect. So cosine is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Adjacent over the hypotenuse. So the cosine is x divided by 1, which is x. So the cosine is x. Is x. All right. So if I want to find the cosine right here in the left, in the second quadrant right here. Okay. So if I do have a line like this, and I want you to graph a right triangle right here. What is your cosine? This is 90 degrees, and this is 1. What is your cosine? The cosine is going to be a negative number, -x. Good job. Good job, Ryland. Good job, Caleb. So it's going to be -x. So from what I learned here is, the other thing is, before I move on, what is the sign? In this case here. What is the sign in this case right here? The sign is, all right. So you're going to have, okay. So the sign is the y value, because it is y opposite divided by the hypotenuse. All right. Now, from what I gathered from all of this here, if I want to find the y value right here, the y value right here, it is going to be positive. How about the y value here? The y value is this dot right, is this value right here, which is going to be negative. The y value here, it is going to be negative, and the y value here will be positive. So this is what I exactly need you to learn for today is, please write this down, and we are going to use this one every single day. All students take calculus. We are going to use this every single day moving forward. All right, so he's writing it down. All the students take calculus. What does it mean all the students take calculus, and how is that related to what we're doing here? So if I want to name this one, A is the first, oh, I'm sorry, all, and we're going to use just S. Here, take, we're just going to use T, and calc, we're just going to use C. All right, all the students take calculus. What I mean by that is, is that in the first quadrant, as we learned right here, the cosine is positive, which is the x-axis, and the sine is positive, which is the y-axis. Here, the cosine is negative, let me write it here. So this is the cosine, comma, sine. This is the cosine, which is negative, comma, sine, which is positive, negative. Same thing here. All right. Now, since the cosine here is positive, so that means the cosine, it is going to be positive, and the sine will be positive. Now, what is the tangent? What is tangent? If I ask you to find what is tangent in this diagram here, can you find tangent for me? All right, who is Brandman? All right, I'm removing him from the class right now. All right, who else? So it is the y over x. The tangent is, so the 10 is y over x. All right, the 10 is the y over x. Perfect. So which means if you're going to divide the y over x, which is the cosine, the sine divided by the sine, that's your tangent. So this means the 10 in this case is going to be positive. My point here is all of the functions, the cosine, the sine, and the tangent, all of them are positive. Now the second one is the student, the s. What is s? S is the sign, represents the sign, which means the cosine in this case, which means this cosine in this, the cosine is negative, the sine is positive, and the tangent, if I say the tangent is sine over cosine, what's the value of tangent? Is it going to be positive or negative? Please write it in the chat box. So the tangent will be negative. Got it? The tangent will be negative. Okay, because it is sine divided by cosine, which is going to be negative. Remember, one more time, the tan, it's sine divided by cosine, equals sine divided by cosine. All right, let's move on. The next one is the take, which is tangent. In this case, cosine will be negative, sine will be negative, and the tangent, obviously, negative divided by negative is equal to positive. The last one is, okay, the calculus, which means the cosine is going to be positive, the sine will be negative, and the tangent will be sine divided by cosine, which is negative divided by positive, is going to be negative. You must remember this chart moving forward. You're going to have to remember it. There is no way you can do anything in trig functions without remembering this chart. All right? How did I get all of this? I got all of this from this thing here, negative, positive. So the cosine in this case is positive. The sine is positive. The tangent, which is sine over cosine, positive divided by positive, is positive. All right? So let's take this right here. All right. So do you already understand what we're doing? Please answer this poll in a few seconds. I'll give you 5 seconds to answer this poll. All right. I got 8, 9 people. How about the rest of the class? All right. Now let's move on, and I'll explain exactly what we're doing here. Okay. The next thing before we get to the reference angle is, because this is a very critical topic right here. If you remember from Math 3, if I ask you to sketch angle 120 degree, which quadrant would that be? Please type in the chat box if it is a quadrant 1 or 2 or what? Quadrant 2. So remember, because it's a positive, because it is a positive, which means we're going counterclockwise. Perfect. We go counterclockwise. So if it's 120, so you're going 90 and another 30. So that is 120 degree, which means, can someone explain to me what is the degree from here all the way to here? What is that? So if from here to here is 120, that means the black angle right here, it is 30 degree. 30 degree. Perfect. All right. Now, how about if I want you to sketch angle negative 120 degree? Which quadrant would that be? Is it going to be quadrant 4, quadrant 3? Let's look at this one. Right here, if we're going to start from this one right here, the initial value, okay? So because it is a negative angle, so just remember, if it's a positive angle, you go counterclockwise. Counterclockwise. If it's a negative angle, you go clockwise. All right. So in this case here, negative 120, I'm going to start from here. That is 90 plus 30 gives me 120. So this is 30 degree right here. From here to here is 30 degree, which means from here to, wait a second. This is supposed to be 60 degree, not 30 degree. Yes, supposed to 30. 60, I mean. All right, that's what it means. Okay. Now, what does it mean reference angle? And that's the name of the topic. We're going to use whatever, this a chart and this a chart to find the reference angle. What does it mean reference? Just from the word reference, what do you know about the reference? Can you give me like a little definition about what you know about reference? All right. The question is, what do you know about the reference, the word reference? So someone says referring to a point of relationship, so a relation. Okay, so reference, if you're saying something, you just, people ask, well, what's your reference? Where's the original point? Where did it come from? That's what it means by the word reference. So let's explain what the reference angle here. Reference means, okay, so let me explain what reference is. So if I get these angles here, if I get this angle to find the word reference. So if I say sine 120 degree, sine 120 degree, okay, sine 120. So I want to find sine 120, which means we'll go from here all the way to here. It is 120 degree. Okay, the reference means the reference means the distance, or how far, or the angle means the angle from the x-axis to the terminal side. That's what it means by the word reference. Okay, so the reference angle is, which means any angle you're going to write it, any angle, if you graph any angle, this side right here is your initial side. And this side right here is your terminal side. That's your terminal side. Okay, or where the angle ends. So any angle, if you want to write any angle, the original position is supposed to start with the x-axis, and that's your initial side, and the terminal side is the other side, or the other side of the angle. All right, so reference angle is the angle from whatever the x-axis to that one right here. So which means if I want to find the reference angle, it is going to be the angle from here down all the way to the x-axis. So if this whole thing is 120, that means the angle from here to here is supposed to be what? It's supposed to be 60 degrees. That's the reference angle. All right, 60 degrees. That's the reference angle. So sine 120 is the same thing, is equal to sine 60 degrees. Is the same thing. So if you put this in the calculator, if I grab the calculator right here, and if I add this one, and obviously I need the mode to be in degree, and if I type in sine 120, it will be the same as, it will be sine 120, it will be what? The same as sine, wait a second, why it's not in, all right, let me just put it in degree. Got it. So that is sine 120 is equal to this, and the other one is sine 60, which is going to be the reference angle. That's 0.866. All right. I will remind me later, and I will show you where to get this calculator from. All right. Now, so sine 60 is the same as sine 120. Let me give you another example similar to this. If I want to find cosine 300 is equal to what? Cosine 300. Where should 300 go? Which quadrant should 300 go? First, second, third, or fourth? 300 is in fourth quadrant. Let's see. So you're going to go 90, 180, 270. 270 plus 30 is equal to 300. So this is 30 right here, right? I'm going to have to start from the initial side. Remember, any angle you're graphing it, you must start from the initial side. So this is your initial side, and this is your terminal side. Okay, now let's get back to this. If your angle is, 300, so what's your reference angle? The reference angle is from, it's going to be this angle right here. It is going to be this angle right here. All right, it is going to be that angle. All right, which is going to be 60 degrees. So that means cosine 300 is the same as, is the same as cosine 60 degrees. All right, I'm going to give you a question. Take a few seconds and try to find out which one will be the answer right here. That's what you're going to see in a minute in Canvas. So let's call this option 1, option 2, 3, and 4. Don't write the answer. Don't say anything yet. And I am going to share this one here. All right, pick which one is the right answer. You can always minimize the poll to see the question if you want. Take a few seconds and try to find out which one is the answer. All right, we have 10 seconds. Let me see that chat on here. All right, it should be, all right, let me input right here and see what you got. All right, most of you got option 3. Most of you got option 3. Let's see what we got. All right, so if I want to find sine 190, so this is the x-axis, the y-axis, 190 will be, okay, go 90 degree, 90 plus, oh, that's 180 plus 10, right? So it's going to be right here. That's 10. So your reference angle is the angle from here to here, which is 10 degree. Okay, but just remember one thing. If we're talking about the sine function, remember here all students take calculus. In the first quadrant, everything is positive. The second quadrant, the sine only is positive, but in the third quadrant, the sine is negative. The only thing is positive here is the tangent. All right? Which means the answer will be option 3. All right? You did a great job. Let me give you another problem. I will see if we get it this time. So just make sure to graph your x-axis and the y-axis. Right? All the students take calculus, and based on that, try to identify the reference angle. All right, take a few seconds and try this one. And I'm going to launch another poll in a second. All right, so let's get back here in poll. So let's see who is the. All right, most of you got option A. Most of you got option A. So let's see what we got here. Why is it option A? Again, we're going to graph the x-axis, the y-axis. Where is the 200 at? Which quadrant is that? The 200 in quadrant. So this is, if I not do this one, that will be 90, 180 plus 20, right? So the distance or the angle between, or the angle from, let me get the green one. Angle from this one to the x-axis right here is 20. Since we are talking about the sine, all students, the sine is positive here and positive here. But the sine right here is negative. So it's going to be negative sine 20. That would be the answer. All right. It will be negative sine 20. Another example. Let's get something. Okay. Let's do the cosine one. Take a few seconds and try the cosine one. And write the answer in the chat box. You just need positive acute angle. Remember. Okay. So one thing, just remember, the reference angle must reference angle must be between 0 and 90 degree. So that's acute positive angle. It has to be between 0 and 90 degree. So don't forget the negative 220, we are going clockwise. So we're going to go this way. 90, 180, 180 plus 20 is 200, plus 20 is 220. So this should be 40, right? Should be 40. So that means the distance from the angle to the x-axis is 40. So we got the angle is 40 degree. Now let's find the cosine. Cosine in the second quadrant. All the students, actually forget about the t. All the students take calc. Which quadrant is the cosine positive? Cosine is positive in quadrant A and quadrant D, or quadrant 4, first and fourth quadrant. But cosine in the second quadrant is negative, so the answer is supposed to be cosine negative 40. Is the same thing. They're both of them the same thing. Any question? Do we understand this so far? Let me go back and revisit this one more time, just to keep in, just make sure everybody is, and especially like if you came late or whatever, so you understand what we're doing. We started the class by identifying those points right here. We said if it's positive, positive, it's going to be in the first quadrant. This will be in the first quadrant. Because, oh, sorry. Right, it will be in the first quadrant. This will be in the second quadrant because it's negative, positive. Third quadrant because it's negative, negative. This will be in fourth quadrant because it's positive, negative. Here, positive, negative, fourth quadrant. Negative, negative is the third quadrant. And we said that the x-axis represents, or the cosine represents the x-axis. The sine represents the y-axis. Okay, negative, so which means that the cosine is negative here, the sine is positive here. The next step that we did today, we said, here's what we did. We said the tangent is basically sine over cosine. If you use the opposite adjacent, opposite, like tangent opposite over adjacent, you will find out that tangent is sine over cosine. And since tangent is sine over cosine, which means if I divide sine, which is positive, by negative, is going to give me negative. Here, if I divide negative by negative, the tangent in this case here is going to be positive. Negative divided by positive, it is going to be negative. Positive divided by positive is going to be positive. Now, I asked everybody, you must remember those 4 words. These all the students take calculus for moving forward and for your calculus classes. All means all 3 functions, the cosine, the sine, and the tangent, are positive. Second one, as you can see, if you want to write any point right here, if I give you a point right here, and you want to read this point, it's going to be negative, that's the x-axis, and positive, which means the cosine in this case is negative and the sine is positive. That's what we have. The cosine is negative and the sine is positive. What's the tangent? Tangent is sine over cosine. Positive over negative is negative. Everybody understand what we get here? How we get here? All right, let's move on. Now, the next piece of the today's lesson, I asked everybody to sketch angle 120, because if it's a positive angle, you go counterclockwise. If it's a negative angle, you go clockwise. And you must start from the initial side, which is the x-axis right here. You must start from this side right here. All right? You must do that. And then you just grab the angle. If it's positive 120, you go this way. If it's negative 120, you go this way. All right. Now, the next one we did today is the reference angle, which is the main lesson for today, but I have to introduce all of this to get to the reference angle. If I want to find angle 120, what is the reference? What is the original of angle 120? Remember, the reference angle must be between 0 and the 90 degree. It has to be in the first quadrant. Okay? So the reference for sine 120, let's graph sine 120. 120 is right here. Okay, 120 is right here. Let's take this example. Let's take this example. That would be better, because the other one, there's a mistake right here. I made it. I'll get back to this in a second. So cosine 300 equals to what? So let's grab the angle 300. If we grabbed it, we start from the initial side. You go around 300. So that is 180, 270, and 30 degree will get, and 30 will be 300. Okay? Now, when you get to this angle right here, the reference will be what? The reference will be the distance from here to the x-axis, which is 60 degrees, which means cosine 300 is the same as cosine 60 degrees. All right, now don't forget the next step, that all students take Calc, which means cosine in this case is positive. Here's tangent is positive. Here everything is positive. So since I am in the fourth quadrant right here, that means cosine is positive, and I got positive 60. All right, let's move on to the next one. Questions. Let's say sine 190. If you graph 190, since it's a positive angle, you go this way. 190, you end up with taking 10 degrees in the third quadrant. The distance from this angle to the x-axis is 10 degrees. Since we're dealing with the sine, all the students take calculus. The sine here is negative. So sine 190 is the same as negative sine 10. All right, the next one is, so if you want to know which expression is equivalent to sine 200, the sine 200, you're just going to graph it and try to find the distance from this point to the x-axis. All right,